Be'ez Hashem, we're going to continue the sugya now, Sif Dalet. So just a few ha'oras before we continue on what we spoke about yesterday. Yesterday, right? It was?
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot of things in Sif Dalet that we haven't really, we haven't spoken about, we need to speak about. Specifically, for example, tea. What tea is the Mishnah Berurah talking about? Is it the same tea that we have? Coffee as well, of course, we have to discuss. The Indian of Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi, it's Maramas in a few places. You look in the Be'alocha. There's a lot of, like I said, Bishul is one big sugya that we're learning piece by piece, but you kind of have to have the whole picture till you really understand it. And it's going to take me time and share to go through almost everything that we possibly can. So bear in mind that there's a lot of things that we haven't got to yet that we are Be'ez Hashem going to get to. There's a lot to speak about, a lot to go through. So just bear in mind there's a lot of things that are intertwined in this sugya. I think it's Siv Hey, which I think I would like the Olam to start very, very soon because we need to get moving. And we're going to talk more about the Indian of coffee and tea. Because in Sif Hey you've got the Bishul Afiyah, which is where a lot of that comes into. But it also is Toli and Kalei Bishul as well. We have to get into Kalei Bishul. There's a lot of sugyas we have to get into. So in Hashem, we've got a long way to go. So if there's anything that's not clear, don't think it's because you got something, didn't get it clear in the sugya. It's just because maybe we didn't get to it 100%, either in Siman Shulchan Aruch or in Sherida. So, with that introduction in mind, let us continue with the question that we ended off yesterday's share with as follows. So we said Reb Kiva Eiga. This is Reb Kiva Eiga's ha'ora question, whatever. That Reb Kiva Eiga asks that this should be, it's not only, you can look this up, but there's a few places by there that talk about the Shaila, each with a different Mahalach and Lomdus, whatever. Avnei Nezer talks about it. Kuv Chav Tes Zayin, Till David, Sikot Yud Zayin, the Chazanish, Lamed Zayin, Yud Gimel, and Reb Kiva Eiga is in Reish Nun Gimel, by the way. It's not in Shin Yud Ches, in case you're looking for it, it's in Reish Nun Gimel. So Reb Kiva Eiga asked the Kasha, that since we really paskin that yesh bishul acha bishul, at least l'chumra of a dova lach, so have a eitzah. My eitzah is to heat up the dova lach in an oifen a heta dahainu, without getting involved in the sugya kli shlishi, right? In a way that it's only lukewarm, whatever. Once it's lukewarm, we learned yesterday, Al Pi the Ramah in Sif Tezvav, which we haven't fully understood the Lomdus because we're not up to Sif Tezvav yet, that once it's still nice and warm, according to Ashkenazim, you're allowed to reheat it because it's still got a din of hot. The Mela once got a din of hot, I can now heat it all the way. Just like I'm allowed to take a warm dinner soup and make it even hotter by adding hotter soup, I can do the same thing over here. The Ma'aseh Reb Kiva Eiga, Till David, Avnei Nezer, other Gedolei person, the Chazanish, and everyone else said absolutely not. You're not allowed to do that. And the basic reason, I think the Olam were, as it was running out, the Olam were trying to come up with a pshat, which is an obvious pshat, which is that since the warmth of the original bishul is still there, then it's that warmth that you're allowed to heat up on Shabbos. Masha'in Kain, if there's been a hefsek, if there's been an interruption between the original warmth that got heated up before Shabbos, Beheta, and what happened on Shabbos, that's no shaykhs. So the Minchas Yitzchak, I have to tell you, you've got to look at this up. This tshuva in the Minchas Yitzchak is gold. It's an amazing tshuva. Chelek Sima Kuf Chav Zayin Ois Beis, where the Minchas Yitzchak has a whole mahalach to explain pshat, why, and we're not going to do justice to it. Look it up yourself, but just in a small way, he says like this. He says, you look at every bishul that you're chayiv for, is you're chayiv not necessarily for the malacha that you did because you didn't do much. We spoke about this in the beginning, right? You weren't really mavashel it. What you did is you put on a fire, you put on a pot, and you put some vegetables inside a pot with some liquid, you made yourself a chicken soup. Good, it's attributed to you, it's not a grama, it's a maisa, that's how they did it in the Mishkan, we spoke about it over there. But at the end of the day, you didn't really do the actual malacha. Malacha is happening by itself, you prepared it. Mimela, if the heat that you have on Shabbos is not coming from a heat from before Shabbos, which means it's not coming from a koyach of a bishul that started before Shabbos, then there's no continuation of something that was started before Shabbos that you're continuing. Because over here the liquid became 100% cold. Once it became cold, Kollel Bishul, you lost the milah of the heat. The heat is the whole milah of the bishul by a dovalach. Once you have that hefsek, that interruption, we can no longer attribute it to something you started before Shabbos, and that's like a new Maisa, has a new Cheftz's Maisa, has a new Shem Maisa of Bishul. Masha'en came when it's still warm from the original Bishul he did before Shabbos, since at the end of the day, All you did before Shabbos was do something that will cause it to become hot, and this is a hemshech of that. So Mimela, that's why you're allowed to continue it. I hope the Olim are following. I hope it's not too early in the morning for this. But as I said, I'm not doing justice to it. Look at the Minchas Yitzchak. It's a moydige shtickle. It's a gewaldige lomdistige shtickle. But we have to go weiter because we don't have so much time. What is considered to be a davar lach? Again? We're talking. Oh, you already know. Wouldn't help you. Same thing. Wouldn't help you because the same nonsense applies. It's not a hemshech. It's not a hemshech. There was a hefsek because it got cold. Al-Kapadim, what is considered to be a davar lach? When we say davar lach and davar yavish, what is the hagdara of a davar lach and what is the hagdara of a davar yavish? So Rav Moshe has a famous tshuva. Rav Moshe writes in Chere Dalet Siman Dalet Ois Hey, where he writes and he wants to tie in Mishabur's mashma this way, that something that spreads, something that's pourable, that is a davar lach. So when you have, for example, a sauce under chicken, under meat, whatever, and it pours, that's considered to be a davar lach. If you've got a bit of moisture inside the kegel, inside the piece of schnitzel, that's not a davar lach. True, when you put it on the fire, it can sizzle up. You put a schnitzel in the oven, for example, that was deep fried, you can see the bubbling, you can see the oil coming out. That's not called a davar lach. And therefore, according to that, anything that stays in its form is got a din of a davar yavesh. And we'll see enough communities in a minute, and therefore that will be that. Now, according to Rav Moshe, according to that, ketchup will pashtus be a davar lach because it is pourable. Obviously, maybe there are different makes, different mahalchim, but in a general mahalach, a ketchup is a pourable item, not as pourable as oil, but it's definitely not as stiff as a piece of kegel. So therefore, because of that, it's considered to be a davar yavesh. So, a davar lach, and if it's a davar lach, it will be a nafkamina later on when we talk about the inyan of a davar gush. When we get up to davar gush, the sugya davar gush, very, very nageya. When we talk about davar gush, you're allowed to put salt, pepper, ketchup, whatever it is, on your piece of chicken, on your schnitzel that's on your plate. We'll talk about a davar gush, famous Chassam Sofer, we'll get to it. But Al-Kapanim, just to note that, you should know that that's what that is. There are those that hold that ketchup is dafka a din of a davar yavish, or Blashav held that way, it's got a din of a davar yavish, but Rav Moshe is clear that it is a davar lach. Why? Because it's an oichel. It's tomatoes that were cooked that has just been put in a pureed form. It's a din of a oichel. It's not a din of a mashke. They tell you the hilchos talk of taros they come with, whatever different rayas that they come up with. Al Kapanim, Rabbi said, let's move because we've got a lot to do. What happens? Okay, it's easy. If it's davar yavesh, ein bishul bishul. Davar lach, yesh bishul bishul. What if you have a mixture of both? What if, for example, if you have a tray? Just like a simple example, I got a tray of meat, and there's gravy in the bottom of the meat. So I care about the meat, I don't care about the gravy. So am I allowed to heat up something that's partial yavesh, partial lach? What is the din in that case? Do we go basaroiv? What do we say in such a case? So I want to get, it's very, very important, this shaila, very, very lemaisa. Let's talk about where this comes from, and then we'll get to halacha lemaisa in a moment. Number one, there's a modik say for the minchas kohen. The minchas kohen brings from a lavush that it is asa, the lavush, he says, is asa to reheat a pie on Shabbos Kodesh. The minchas kohen is choylek on the lavush, because the shumon, the fat, the gravy inside the pie is fully cooked, and even if you don't want to call it even if you want to call it a davar lach, it's mu'at, it's a small amount, it's a minority, and therefore it's going to be mutter. Why? Because we go basar roiv, and if roiv is yavesh, I don't care if there's a sauce and there's a little bit of liquid in it, we go basar roiv. If roiv is yavesh, ein bishul acha bishul. Azoi paskin the minchas kohen. One second. The Eliyah Rabbah leaves this off as a tzorech ian. Doesn't make any sense what he's saying. However, the Eglital and the Shvisa Shabbos go with the Shitas HaMinchas Kohen. Both the Eglital and the Shvisa Shabbos paskin like the Minchas Kohen, which means we go basarayv. The Beis Yosef, not over here, to Beis Yosef in Rishon Gimel, brings a Shitas Rabbeinu Yerucham, where Rabbeinu Yerucham says that if Roiv is Roitev, then it's Asa. Sounds like we go basarayv. The Pri Megadim in Rishon Gimel, Mishmos Zav Sikot Yud Gimel, says we also go basar roiv, and since that's a kavana, because everyone normally goes basar the roiv of kavana, melechas machshavas osra Torah, we care about roiv. If we go with roiv tells me if roiv is fleish, Yesh, I don't care if there's liquid on the bottom, there's a bit of roitiv, it doesn't bother me. The problem begins that the Pri Megadim, Veishnon Gimel Eishlava Memalev, it says that if you look into Rabbeinu Yerucham inside, open up your Rabbeinu Yerucham, that the Beis Yosef himself quotes Zuk the Pri Megadim, it doesn't say the word Roiv. It doesn't say Roiv. Look at Rabbeinu Yerucham, says the Pri Megadim, it doesn't say the word Roiv. It says Kol Sheyesh Loi Roitev. It doesn't say Kol Sheyesh Roiv Roitev, and he brings a raya that often, not going into this now, it brings a raya that the Beis Yosef often changes the Lashon of Rabbeinu Yerucham. The Minchas Kohen realized this, and he says, you're right, I understand. But Lemaisa, the Beis Yosef obviously wrote whatever he held, and whatever he held was halacha Lemaisa, and therefore Lemaisa, at the end of the day, anything with roiv liquid has got a din of velach. We can go backwards and forwards on this. The Shulchan Aruch Harav, so Shulchan and others are not soymach on this bechlal. They hold it has to be yovesh legamri, no liquid whatsoever. Shulchan Aruch Harav and others as well. Reb Moshe has a tshuva and Daled Ayin Daled Zayin where he says, I don't understand between roiv and miyat. At the end of the day, what's the difference? You're cooking. But since the Pri Megadim gives a svara and me'ika adin ein bishal chabishal b'dovalach me'ika adin ein zedin boros loshen Reb Moshe. It's not clear because of all of this raid that we're saying. Lemaisa, let's talk halacha lemaisa now. Okay, this is where this come from. Just giving you some marmakomis, food for thought. But al kaponim halacha lemaisa. If I have a davar yovesh that has liquid in it as well, what is the din of that? According to the Minchas Kohen, the Egletal Shvisa Shabbos, das Torah of the Marsham, by the way. I don't know if I've ever said this over here, but maybe I should. When I was zoicha to do years of Shimush by Rabbi Bishul Orbach Shlita, he used to tell me many things b'Shem Yeshver, Rabbi Yashiv, and he always told me that whenever Rabbi Yashiv had the word, the Marsham, the Marsham. The Astorah Marsham Paskins that the Minchas Kohen. The Hautzvi, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, also by the way, Chelik Aleph Simantes, Paskins this way. The Kaf HaChaim seems to go with this Mahalach also, and very interestingly enough, as a Tzad Lahakol, Rabbi Shashtamach and Chuvas Vanogos, Chelik Aleph Siman Reish Zayin Ois Hey, also is Noita Lahakol in this Mahalach. L'maisa roiv gedolei apoiskim ocholik and machme, because at the end of the day, if you've got davar lach, then you're cooking a davar lach. Yesh bishul bishul b'davar lach. You know that it's there. You can see it. You can pour it. Memelu it's asa. That's the Pri Megadim. That's the Elya Rabbah. Shulchan Aruch Harav. So Shulchan Reb Shlomo Zalman Reb Elyasher Chacham Ben Tzion Abba Shaul in Ole Tzion. The Chassam Sofer Gus Moshe Reb Nissen Karelis Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Shemesh Shemogin as well, by the way, Rav Mashash, also Paskins Lahachme in the Sugya as well. So just to give you some Marmakomis in that Sugya. So Al Kaponim, it comes out, La Locha La Maisa, that if you've got Roitiv, it is Osa. However, if the Roitiv is, for example, Toifeach Hamanas La Tfiach, for those of you that are not familiar, it's a Gemara in Yuma, it's Negea to Aruch Chaim Siman Shinchov, when we talk about Schita, Toifeach Hamanas La Tfiach means that if I press on it with my finger, and I put my finger to my thumb, my thumb gets wet. Right? It's a sugya by hilchos schita, whether it's yes schita, not schita, whatever. But al kaponim, the place container, that's not considered to be a davar lach. If I take a schnitzel or a kegel and I, push it down with my finger, I might get oil on my finger, and if I do, I can make my thumb, oily. That doesn't mean that it's got a din of davar lach, and therefore that will be no problem whatsoever. Again, it sounds like from the Shulchan Aruch Harav that is machmeh in ganzen. It has to be completely dry, and if there's any lachluchas there whatsoever, have a look at the Shulchan Aruch Harav. It's very machmeh until the last drop. It has to be 100% dry. But most poskim hold that everything has got moisture. Every kegel, every schnitzel, every piece of meat, every piece of chicken. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that you can actually pour that's considered to be a davar lach. Now, by the way, there is a sugya that we're not going into again, I'm sorry, it's later on, the sugya of pashtida. The sugya of pashtida is when I have a food with liquid inside that's recognizable, what din does that have? And that's really the sugya of the hot chocolate souffle that people want to heat up on Shabbos morning, that when you heat it up it gets liquidy and you want to serve it on Shabbos. Another shaila, you're allowed to serve it together with the ice cream. Could be a melting the ice cream, that's stomach shaila bishul. You've got unpasteurized eggs over there as well, not for now. But that's the sugya later on in Hilchos Bishul. One of the shailas, I guess we'll do this, l'kovid Rosh Chodesh Kislev, are you allowed to heat up a donut on Shabbos Kodesh? Or do we say that depending on where you come from, the jam or the jelly inside it, is that considered to be bishul or not bishul? By the way, Reb Nissan Kollel asked the kasha if you're allowed to heat up a donut on top of the box, right? There are yidden, by the way, that light outside. I'm not now going into now hilchas halakas haneris on hilchas Chanukah, whether you should or you shouldn't. If you have a kasha about it, you look at the Modik Sefer called the Shais and Juvas Dvay Yeshua Chelet Beis, where he talks about this. It's a Santa Minig that people have, is they light menorah on the streets in these boxes over there. They're not yaitza b'chalal. What are they doing? Mechatesa. The Gemara says clearly, b'shas sakona maniach al shulchan v'dayoy. Put it on the table. You can't say times change, because if that's the case, then what do you do on Rosh Hashanah? Why we do tkiyah shofar by Musaf, when really the ikar takona was to do shofar by Shachris, but they changed it b'shas sakona to Musaf. No, it's not shas sakona anymore. It's not shas sakona anymore. We didn't change it back to Shachris, so why are you changing it back anymore? Maniach al shulchan v'dayoy. Zuk the Dvay Yeshua, big choshev rav from Tel Aviv. These people that lie outside the poshet, not yaitza. Sidach Sid Shoilam are excited about this. But I'll upon him, this is not a psak halacha. This is not a psak halacha. Ask a local Orthodox rabbi where you should be lighting this year. Maybe we'll talk about the Inyanim of Chanukah coming up. Be'ezer Haba Lein and Tov. We've got a bit of time for that. But I'll upon him. How did I get onto this? Reb Nissan Kollel, it says to heat up a donut on top of the box, right? Because the top of the box gets very hot because the neighbors are inside. The box is closed, and therefore the top gets very hot. Are you allowed? Is that considered to be nana from the neighbors, which are not allowed to be nana? Not for now. Stam Rabbi say Chodesh Kislev coming up, so we have to get a bit. Who? Bishul? Oh, exactly. That's Nachanavi. That's what I got into. How about Bishul in this case? So the Meister of Shlomo Zalman talks about the shaila about heating up a donut on Shabbos Kodesh, and he says Avada, the jam, the jelly's got a din of a Davi Yovish. It's got a din of Davi Yovish. You're absolutely fine. No problem whatsoever.
Jelly is Yovish or Kus in a donut?
Both. Hold its Yovish mamas. It generally is. It doesn't run. Oh please, it doesn't run. You buy it in the jar. You can't pour it out. Take a knife. You have to.
It's a different jam. It's not the jam you get in a jar.
Sometimes it is. It depends who makes the donuts. I don't know. It doesn't run. It's a bit shaky. It drips. Gavaldik. Okay, Rabbi say. Deli roll? What do you mean deli roll? Nah, that's fine. Deli roll is fine. Rabbi say, let's just finish off with one last shaila, and then we'll leave the olam with noch a shaila as well. Be'ez al Shem. And this is actually a shaila which I really don't want to get too much into, even though it's such a geshmaka shaila. Is over here you find in Bishul. Ashkenazim and Sfadim have a big chiluk. Now you don't find this often in Shabbos. What about it? Depends if you're Hungarian or not Hungarian. That's really depends on. I can't know. Maybe we have to do a demonstration. I don't know. Maybe we have to start bringing compounds. Anyway, so the emes is when it comes to Shabbos, there are not that many differences between Ashkenazim and Sfadim, which is why when I had the Kashrus book, my Chavusa that I learned halachos with, he made a whole different book called Kashrut in the kitchen. Baruch Hashem, it's amazing. But when I did the Shabbos book, so there are not that many differences in Ashkenazim and Sfadim, and we included it in the book, for Ashkenazim and Sfadim. This is one of the few places there's a major difference in Ashkenazim and Sfadim about reheating liquids on Shabbos Kodesh. By the way, as it was pointed out to me, the Be'alacha, the Olim Surit Mustama, that the Shulchan Aruch holds that a klisheni's got a din of cold also, even if it's Yatzelet boy. Which means, according to Sfadim, to pour, if you want to add water to the chond on Shabbos, you pour into a klisheni, that water is freezing cold, halachically. You can't put it into copper anymore. Another chumrah for this, for Sfadim. Anyway, so can an Ashkenazi... Correct, but then you got a problem of Zayah. The steam comes up. Okay, not for now. Is a Ashkenazi allowed to ask us? Is a Sfardi allowed to ask an Ashkenazi to put it back for him or not? So someone is saying, and this is not the sugya we're learning, but it's something interesting. If I'm a couple Shabbos early, I make early Shabbos, and I forget to put on a light, forget to put on the AC, am I allowed to ask someone who has not yet been Makabel Shabbos, he's taking regular Shabbos, to do Malach? The answer is it's a Shulchan Aruch Reish Shabbos Gimel Avada, you're allowed. No problem whatsoever. There are many reasons already in the Beis Yosef why I'm allowed to ask someone to do a malacha if I was Makabel Shabbos. One of the main reasons is I was Makabel Shabbos early. I don't have to. I was Makabel a neder upon myself. That's my minhag, whatever you want to say. You're doing regular Shabbos, Kabbaldik, so I don't have any problem. So someone is saying, so it's the same thing over here, right? he's a Sephardi guy. Say that, but Maisa, you're Ashkenazi, and you go with the Ramah. The Ramah holds its mutter, so what's the problem? Like, why is it different to asking someone who doesn't open up bottle caps to open up a bottle cap? Like, what's the difference? Right? If I hold that it's Chumrah, and you hold that it's mutter, what's going on? Okay? So...
It's also for the Ashkenazi.
No. Right, but he's masking that for an Ashkenazi it's mutter. It's not the pshat that he holds that anyone that does this is a toid of our Mishnah, it's a mistake and it's wrong and it's asa. He knows that his minik, his Kabbalah is that he is a Sfardi Memela, he paskas like Shulchan Aruch. You are Ashkenazi Memela. By the way, when someone used to come to a May Bransdorfer with a shaila, that's how. When people used to come to a May Bransdorfer with a shaila, he would paskin the shaila whichever way he saw fit to paskin it. They would say, yeah, Rebbe, I'm Sfardi. You came to ask me a shaila. This is how we're paskin. It's like Gezint. What if Kamina Ashkenazi is Vardim? This is how I came out the sukkah. This is what we're going to paskin. Santa Zach. That's how he used to paskin. It means not enough Kamina Ashkenazi or Svardi. But yeah, I could put him. Your kasha was Nachamol. He's masking that there's a Ramah. Now, for someone that has a minig of the Ramah, it's okay. It's not pshat that he holds its asa. Anyway, just moving on very quickly, otherwise downstairs they're going to be upset. The Tzitz Eliezer has a whole tshuva on this. Chelik Yud Ches Siman Lamed Beis.
I didn't cancel it, don't worry.
Where he throws out the raya that it's shaykhis to Kabbalah Shabbos. No shaykhis to Kabbalah Shabbos, because on Kabbalah Shabbos there's an Issa Gavra, meaning I was Makabal Shabbos. I decided this week to Makabal Shabbos. It was my choice to Makabal Shabbos early, and therefore I didn't have to. I did. That's my choice, right? So therefore the Amir is mutter because I took something upon myself. Masha'enken over here, similar to what you're saying, the Tzitz Eliezer wants to tie now, there's the Issa Gomel. I'm a Svadi, so Mamela, for me, the Shulchan Aruch says that it's an Issa to do that. So if I can't ask someone to do that in that case. So according to that, Yalkut Yosef, by the way, brings as well, Tzitz Eliezer, Reb Nitzan Kavelet, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Reb Zil Obach told me as well, about it's also gomo for a Svadi to ask an Ashkenazi to do it in that case. The Yalkut Yosef asked, what happens if the Ashkenazi chaps on his own, right, to do it? He says that he chaps that the Sfardi can't do it, so he does it on his own. Does the Sfardi have to make a machar? Does he have to start going on the streets with signs? You're not allowed to do this, make a machar? Avada not, huh? Is he allowed to eat it? But the Eved. So Avada says absolutely not. You do not have to make a machar whatsoever. And the Yalkut Yosef Paskins, he's even allowed to eat it in that case. As I Paskin come out all the Gedolim Poskin in that case. So I say, I want to end with one last shaila. We'll leave that on to think about it. My Rosh Yeshiva of Scheinberg had a mahalach that every Thursday he had something called Mishmor for Thursday night. The Olim used to come in, the Pachim used to come in, and he would give the Olam a kasha.